Welcome, folks, to this week's edition of Tech Sales Advice. I am, of course, your host, Chris White, and we're coming to you a little bit off schedule. It's a Friday afternoon here in the eastern part of the United States, and this is the LinkedIn Live program for pre-sales professionals and pre-sales leaders. These are live conversation, folks. As I like to say, unscripted, unrehearsed, and unpredictable. And I'm delighted to welcome this week's guest, Miss Sara Jones. She's the Global VP of Pre-Sales with Zendesk. And she and I are going to be talking about less demo and more of everything else. Sara, welcome. How are you?
I am great, Chris. Thank you so much for hosting me today. I'm delighted to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you. And I have to say, it's either your smile or something just lights up the screen today. So I can tell, maybe it's because it's a Friday, I don't know, but I can tell you're in a good mood. I know you love talking about pre-sales, and I'm excited to dig in with you. By the way, folks, I've already seen a few comments online. If you care to say hello, please feel free to do so. I need to put my glasses on to see the notes. But folks, we don't see you out there. So by all means, if you want to say hello, if you have any questions for Sara or myself, please ask. Sara, I introduced you as the Global VP of Pre-Sales. And by the way, I love the fact that you use the term pre-sales. That could probably be another conversation. Could I trouble you to introduce yourself a little bit more broadly for anybody who may not know you or know your background?
Sure, I'd be delighted to. So I have, you can tell by the accent that I wasn't born and bred in America, although I do have American citizenship. So that's
congratulations. Awesome.
I have spent the vast, like 99% of my career in pre-sales. I
Amazing.
sort of fell into the tech world very early in my career before, as we were transitioning from typewriters into computers. That's how long ago I started my career. And immediately fell in love with the role. I was working for a very small maintenance management software company in the UK that got bought by an American company, and that's what brought me to America.
Interesting.
And then I joined SAP, and I did the individual contributor role at SAP for 9 years, before doing a myriad of different leadership roles, covering, different segments, looking at SMB, supporting teams for our strategic segment, supporting teams that looked after strategic industries, looking after teams that were in different geos, and looking after teams that were line of business. I also did a transformational assignment in China.
Wow.
So that was a great experience, spending 3 years in Shanghai.
Wow.
Transforming pre-sales in SAP China. And then my last gig at SAP was managing a team of pre-sales for the line of business of customer experience. And then from there, about 18 months ago, I left and joined Zendesk to run the pre-sales team over here at Zendesk, which is a very different from SAP. And I'm absolutely loving it.
Yeah. It's amazing. How long in total were you with SAP?
24 years. This is dating me now.
That is a long run. And I recall when you and I first met, I guess that was near the tail end of your time at SAP. And it's amazing to me and frankly impressive to me that you broke into pre-sales at such a young stage, an early stage of your career. How did you discover? Because that was back in a time when very few people knew what pre-sales or a sales engineer was. In fact, I'm curious, what was your first job title when you first entered this profession?
So I was in my small English company. I was a consultant, a sales consultant. And I was terrible. I can distinctly remember my very first demo. I was right behind the big computer that we had there, no laptops, big computer. And I was facing the audience behind my computer, but I was pointing at my computer and not the screen. I was looking at the computer the whole time and not at the audience. I mean, it's such a vivid memory because I was absolutely terrible at it. I'm surprised I didn't get fired after that. But I had a great mentor, actually. He was like I said, it was a small company. And he was radically candid with me after that demo. But he did it in such a way, because I was in tears. I knew I had really messed up. And he role played with me. He was I guess he would have been the chief revenue officer, although that wasn't his title at the time. But he coached me and was incredibly patient and was very knowledgeable and really helped me to develop. And that's when I knew that this was the role for me, because I just had so much fun. I got such a buzz being in front of the audience. I was always so nervous beforehand. I can remember asking him, I said, how do you not throw up before you're on stage? Because he was the most magnetic presenter that I had seen early in my career. And he said to me, the day that you are not nervous is the day that you are no longer good at your job. And that piece of advice stuck with me for a long time, because I realized that no matter how polished somebody is on the stage or in front of a camera, there's always nerves involved. And it's how you use those nerves then to portray confidence. So that was a great piece of advice.
I mean, a brilliant piece of advice, and he's 100% right. I mean, that still rings true for me today. I mean, even when I do sessions like this, I mean, there's a touch of nerves. Anytime you stand up or sit down, in our case, on a camera, and speak in front of a group of people, whether it's planned and quote scripted or not, I think some healthy anxiety just keeps us on our edge. And so I agree with that. I agree with that advice 100%. By the way, someone has said hello. And so I'm going to get out my glasses. Max Eklund. I hope I'm saying that right, from Houston, Texas. Max, good to see you. Thank you for saying hello. Sara, I want to get into the conversation around less demo and more everything else in a moment. But before I do, something that you said about that experience with that CRO giving you that guidance in I think you said a radically candid manner. Yeah. Did that shape sort of how you managed? And if so, in what way?
Oh, that's a great question. Yes, I've always been known to speak my mind. I think sometimes in my career that has been harmful, but for the vast majority, I think it is been appreciated and has helped me. I think that if you have an opinion and a point of view, and I think this is very relevant in a pre-sales role when we show up with our customers, is having that point of view. One of the things about more of everything else, less demo, right? I think most of the time it is going to be accepted, and so yeah, I do try to lead, manage with transparency, open communication, and as much radical candor as possible.
I think it's a really good lesson there. I think a lot of us struggle with candor, much less radical candor. And I think the reason is because we don't want people's feelings to get hurt, or we don't want to look like the bad person, the bad guy or the bad woman. We fear that it's going to hurt our reputation. But I think when we develop the ability to speak our truth and do so in a caring and respectful way, that's where real growth happens, particularly within organizations. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I would agree.
And I know for me, similar to you, some of my greatest moments of learning and growth have been when people had the courage to tell me things that I didn't necessarily want to hear,
Oh, yes. Yeah. I
And
definitely didn't want to hear early in my career how terrible I had done, but he did it in such a way that it actually leapfrogged my acceleration into the role very, very, very early in my career.
it's amazing how that works. So let's take this conversation a step further in that direction. You mentioned having a point of view. Let's first, and what's ironic is that I think when you and I both think back to early part of our career, one of the first things we think of is the poor demos that we've given, and yet now we're saying we should be doing less demos anyways. What is it, or was it, that sort of put you on this sort of crusade, if I can use that term, of we need to be doing less demos and more of everything else?
So it's come from multiple sources, and it has come from just a lot of experience in the pre-sales world of knowing what actually resonates with our customers more. And I'm not saying no demos, I'm saying less demos. So I think that very early on in my career, the salespeople I was working with were very quick to jump to, oh, just show them something, just show them something, just show them something. And then when I was doing that, you know, if you were watching the body language, if you were watching the reactions in the room, you could see people start to glaze over because, of course, you're so proud of your knowledge, and you've been told to just show them something. And you've been told that, like early in my career, I was a procurement specialist. So it'd be, I would show them everything in procurement. I would show them the rec to check, the bid process, contract management, you name it, everything. And you could see the people weren't really interested in everything. But you could see them light up when you were talking about contract management, because that was actually what the whole evaluation was about. So they didn't care about purchase orders. They wanted to know about complex contract management.
Yeah.
So, and so with intuition and with that experience, you know, then I was realizing that, okay, if an AE is going to ask me to demo, I'm going to say, no, I want to speak to the customer first to find out actually what do they want to see. So, and this was like early in the days when pre-sales were just demo monkeys or demo dollies, or whatever tagline you want to do. So, and then when I was an individual contributor at SAP, I was working in public sector, and those were very, very complex scripted demos. And I found that if I pushed back and I actually wanted to find out what some of the pain points were, my scripted demos then went a lot faster, because I would skip over the bits well, I wouldn't skip, but I would spend minimum amount of time in the bits on the script that weren't really relevant.
Yeah.
And getting to the meat of what their real challenges were. And it was always a battle to get access to do that, both internally with my salespeople, as well as with the customers in public sector. It's a lot easier in Civvy Street than it is in the public sector world.
Yeah.
But it came from that. And now later on in my career, the last 4 or 5 years, as I've branched out with my network and, you know, trying to just get different points of view on pre-sales, I've spoken to a lot of people who run evaluations for customers. And every single one of them has said that the vendors who miss the mark are the ones who don't really understand what the customer is trying to achieve.
Amen.
And that then comes with the everything else bucket.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, customers don't care that the product does A through Z, right? First of all, they want to work with an organization or individuals that they feel understand them, get them, understand what they're trying to achieve, and then can demonstrate just those things that will show them how they're going to achieve those things or solve those problems in a unique way, right? Sarah, I want to pause just for a minute. I'm gonna put my glasses back on. We have a few folks. Juan Pablo, Sarah, he apparently a big fan from Peru, and Jeff Stewart. Good to see you, my friend. That's funny. His CEO is posting or sending him your post. So very,
Wow,
very.
that's great.
That's it. And I don't know if you've met Jeff. He's down in Austin, Texas. Super good guy. If you haven't connected with him. So you mentioned discovery, or you sort of alluded to discovery. So let's talk about and you mentioned having a point of view. So what are the other skills and the other things that we should be developing as pre-sales engineers? And start with yourself. What were the skills that you found that you had to develop to move away from, quote, just show them something?
Yes. You have to have done good customer research before you go. I think that a lot of customers don't want you to get to a meeting with them for your first question to be, tell me what keeps you up at night. Now, that is a very valid question, but when you come to discovery, you don't phrase it like that. It is, I noticed from your last analyst review, I noticed from some social comments that I've seen, I see that you are investing in, I see that you just won this big new customer. How is that then impacting XYZ? What are you challenged with XYZ? So having done some research, you're opening up your discovery with some credibility, right? It's the credibility that I deserve this seat at the table. I deserve your time because I have invested time in you to try and understand before we have this conversation what some of your foundation is for this evaluation, right? So doing the research is really key. And there's a wealth of information out there now. And we have AI. I don't know if any of you have been experimenting with ChatGPT, but I have been doing that to try and shortcut everything that I'm doing. And it's saving me time when I'm researching my customers. So there's a lot of great LinkedIn is awesome as well. There's always a lot of information about the individuals you're speaking to, as well as the companies. So lots of great places to be able to gather the information so that you're coming to some of those initial conversations with your customer with the credibility that you're there with the seat at the table, with some knowledge about them that they can either then validate or point you in the right direction. And then you can steer the conversation depending on those responses. But you're also displaying that point of view that you can then refine and strengthen and deepen so that by the time it comes to the presentation, the presentation is on point with exactly what it is that you have discussed, but it is also leading them to the solution that you know is going to solve their problem, rather than offering them a whole ton of choices. That was something else that a lot of the analysts that I've been talking to who run the evaluations, they say that, customers get overwhelmed with the choices. Everyone's the world is moving at such a fast pace. They don't want to know that your solution can do it maybe this way or the other way. Just tell them our solution can do it. And this is the way that you do it. And this is based upon industry benchmarks. It's based upon hundreds of customers similar to you that are doing this way. So, and then, of course, you're weaving in customer references, customer case studies. You're validating with them that they're doing the right thing. And then weaving it back to some of the expected outcomes that they should see. Are you going to decrease costs? Are you going to increase market share? Are you going to increase your competitive positioning? Whatever it is for that particular customer. And so that's all woven in throughout that customer journey. And in fact, I've got a great example at Zendesk where we pushed back on our internal sales team about doing a demo and said, no, we're going to have a lot of conversations first. We got selected without ever having to do a demo.
Wow.
So we do have to do a demo, but we've already been selected now. And that's the goal, is because we built that credibility. We built the trust. We came with the point of view. We came with the solution already outlined with expected metrics for the return on investment, the return on value that they're going to be getting from us. And so all of those little nuggets throughout the engagement has solidified that we are the best partner for them.
Mm. Well, and you said so many powerful things there that I want to double click on, but the one that comes to mind immediately is they selected you as a partner, right? What we have to remember is that companies aren't just buying a product. They are buying an organization. They are buying individuals. They are buying a relationship. They are buying a business relationship. They are buying a partnership. And of course, they're buying outcomes. You use the word outcomes. And what struck me as you were talking was particularly around the research. It seems so obvious that we would do our homework and do our research before we're going into a meeting. And yet I see so many people getting this wrong or not taking or making the time to do this. Why do you think that is?
I think it is a combination of factors, Chris. I think that I think pre-sales still struggles within our industry to persuade sales that jumping to the demo is not the right thing to do. And so I think there's still an element of that. I think there's a lot of time constraints. You know, the AEs, the salespeople, they are very focused on their quota. They're very focused on maximizing coverage of as many accounts as possible. So they're eager to get in, get out. And I think there may be a perception of, the customer wants to see something. And if we stop that because you want to have discovery conversations, it's going to lengthen my sales cycle. Yeah. So I think there is some element of internal education in our organizations that needs to take place, that, you know, a proven methodology like doing adequate, deep discovery before we go into a demo doesn't impact the length of your sales cycle. In some cases, it will accelerate it
100%.
Because now we don't have to do 8 demos in a row because the first demo missed the mark because we showed everything and not really what the customer wanted to see. So I think there is some element of that. I think particularly in this market as well, our constraints around how many sales guys we are supporting is growing. Unfortunately, I think that maybe, you know, if we're looking after 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 AEs in our organization, there is a lot of pressure on us to be able to move very quickly from one account to the other. So you don't have time to take the breather to do all of that activity. And so, you know, you end up eating into your private time and outside of working hours if you really want to execute that well, because there's just too much of everything on our plates, from looking after the amount of AEs and the amount of, therefore, customers that we are supporting. So, it's a combination of factors, I think.
I think there's a really important lesson here, Sara, and I think this fits really well into your less demo and more of everything else. In addition to having a point of view with the customer, like you said, in addition to doing our research, we really do need to become strategic in managing our own role, managing our own time, managing, if I can use the term, managing our AEs, or managing the relationship with our AEs. Because I do think the trap that too many of us fall into is we're here to serve our AEs, and whatever they ask for, I have to say yes to. And we need to recognize that the organizations are depending on us to make sure that we are using our time and spending our time in the most valuable strategic ways and on the most valuable and strategic activities and opportunities. And we need to take some ownership of that. Do you agree? Because you know, one of the things that would be easy to take away from what you just said is that, well, it's the AEs are asking. The AEs are too quick to try to get to a demo, right? It's the AEs' problem. And look, they have some ownership, But I think we need to take a stand. Here's what I know about AEs. They will always push until they find the limit, until they're told they're at the limit, right? I mean, they're in sales. That's what they do, and they should. I mean, I want to work with sales professionals who are assertive and go-getters and enthusiastic. We need to be ones to draw the line and say, okay, before we rush to a demo, let's do some discovery. Before we do this, let's make sure we do this. Do you agree with that sentiment, Sara?
Yes, I do. And the smartest AEs, the best AEs I've worked with over my career, they do get that. And they're a pleasure to work with as well, because then your customer engagement becomes very collaborative. It becomes strategic. It becomes fun, because then you're brainstorming around win themes. You're brainstorming around, how to make your presentation memorable with all of the information you've gathered. And it's a very joined at the hip collaborative affair. And the AE is also on stage with you. It doesn't pass everything over to the SC to do, the pre-sales person to do. And those that's what makes the job so incredibly fun, is when you're working with a great customer who is sharing and giving their time, and you're working with a great AE who makes being in front of that customer a lot of fun.
100%. Amen. I mean, and I think this is a really important point. Not only are we more effective, but we'll enjoy our job more. It's not going to be, and I do talk to some SEs who feel like their job is almost a drudgery. They're like, I'm just asked by so many people to do so many demos, and my response is, you're going about this the wrong way. You have far more control over your time and your success than you're realizing. And we need to build the courage and the ability to take a stand and have a conversation. By the way, Sara, I don't know if you noticed the question from Ramsey. By the way, Ramsey, my friend, good to see you. I'm sure you know Ramsey. He runs the We the Sales Engineer podcast. And Ramsey, you and I are due for a call, by the way. I think I owe you a call. His question is, how does one solve that high AE-SE ratio? I certainly have an opinion, but Sara, I'll kick that over to you. Do you have a thought on that? Because it sounds like you're dealing with that in your organization a little bit.
Yes, I think it comes with pre-sales being seen as a strategic part of the sales engagement at the board level. Really does. I often joke about threatening to, if our whole pre-sales organization went on strike for a week.
Oh my gosh.
Let's see how we would progress revenue. And I just think that perhaps all of us in pre-sales should go on strike for 1 week. The whole industry. Wouldn't that be just?
Oh, that would be something. I gotta say, there might be some CEOs that wouldn't like us very much for getting that idea started, but that's a funny moment in this conversation.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, I love the work that the Pre-Sales Collective is doing with collecting a lot of data from a lot of different companies. I mean, a shout out to James and Yugi. I mean, what they've created over the last few years is really a phenomenon for our industry. Yeah. And I absolutely love that we are collecting more and more information around, what are best practices for SE ratios in different segments and different software segments, as well as like large enterprise to small but medium business industries. So I do think that we have to be armed with a lot of information and a lot of data points to be able to build a business case internally. And I tell you, I think it's a battle then when it comes there. I think it depends on how well you're regarded as a leader within your organization to be able to make some changes and sway. I think it depends on what your chief revenue officer perceives is the pre-sales, and then working really hard to change their mind, align with them, and see how effective we could be. I found some good stuff from McKinsey and Harvard Business Review on if you increase pre-sales at a higher rate than sales, then you can actually have larger quotas on your AEs, but they maintain them quicker. So just using some of those external validation points as well. And of course, all the great info in Pre-Sales Collective.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, and I would actually love to see if maybe after the fact, if you could post that report, I would love to see one of those reports. It befuddles me that organizations will staff up their account executives or their sales professionals before they'll staff up their solution architects or sales engineers or pre-sales, whatever we call them.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make any sense to me. I do think getting back to Ramsey's question, in addition to what you've said, I think it's that much more critical that teams sit down, AEs and SEs together, particularly if there's some sort of pooled setting, or maybe it's one SE to 3 or to 5 or to 10, whatever it is. Sit down and maybe even with the SE leader and the sales leader, and we have a conversation. Particularly to the AEs, they all need to understand you are competing with each other for his or her time, and understand that if you bring something to the AE, to the SE that requires a time investment on their part, the opportunity cost is all the other opportunities or engagements that they could be working on, which it means it's that much more important that we're bringing qualified, engaged, clients, prospects, opportunities, et cetera. Right. Yes. And I think we as SE leaders have to make sure that our people aren't getting burned out. Right. So I think it requires conversation, communication, and the SE leader, I think, being pretty involved to make sure that that's working out okay. So, amen, Ramsey, really, really good question. I saw that Jeff posted another thing. Yes, the importance of the relationship with sales. There's a reason. Habit number 1 is to partner with our sales counterpart. Critically important. We've been talking about less demo and more of everything else. We've talked a little bit about having a point of view. We've talked about some discovery. We've talked about managing our time, managing the relationship with customers. What else, Sara, when you think of the more of everything else, what else do you put into that category that we haven't talked about yet?
I just want to circle back on what Jeff just said about the AE to SE relationship. And so I have observed over my career that there are 2 types of relationships. And the one that works best is one that mirrors a marriage or a partnership. You don't have to be married.
Yeah.
So, and in any good marriage, there are ups and downs, there are debates and discussions and arguments. But at the end of the day, a good marriage is one where there's collaboration and compromise and communication, right? The 3 C's there. Mm. And so if you have that with your sales counterpart, and you both treating each other with respect and trust with all of that, with the disagreements, because there will always be disagreements and debates that happen, then I think that's the strongest relationship. The ones that I think are not so strong is where the pre-sales people feel the subservient. So it's more like a parent-child, right? The parent is now telling the children what they have to do, and the children, sometimes they go and pout and have a pity party or even stamp their feet and have a temper tantrum. But at the end of the day, they do what they're told because it's the parent that's telling them. And so when you have that type of a relationship with your salesperson, it's not as successful. And that, that's almost 30 years in pre-sales doing this. That's my observation.
It's really
Make
good.
it a marriage, not a
real. Yeah, no, it's really good. And I'm inspired to share a rule of thumb that I heard a number of years ago called the 51-49 rule. But before I get there, and I'll share that in a minute, but before I get there, another thought came to mind that I'm inspired to ask you about. And I've seen this more and more, certainly in the past 3 to 4 years, and I'm asked about this frequently as well. And that is, I have a lot of senior SEs share their frustration over being paired with less senior or more junior AEs. And I think that becomes a very interesting dynamic. What have you seen when that happens, and or what advice do you give to somebody if maybe they're a little bit more senior as an SE, but they're paired with a more junior account executive?
One of the pitfalls is that the SE ends up doing a whole lot more of the account exec's job with a junior AE, or spending a disproportionate amount of time in training the AE in what their role should be, because we're experienced, seasoned SEs, and we know what makes a good AE. So then we spend time telling the AE how they should be doing their job. So yeah, it's a huge time suck. I hope that is not a common occurrence across our industry. I hope we have balanced portfolios to be looking after.
Yeah. Well, and I guess the reason that came up is because, or the reason I think I thought that is I love the analogy you shared between the AESE partnership and a spousal relationship, or a partnership relationship, a personal partnership relationship. So I think it's so true. No relationship, it needs to be respectful. It needs to be collaborative and but it's not going to be perfect. And to your point, there's going to be arguing. In fact, when I reflect on some of the working relationships that I've had, I reflect. And I think you know this about me. After being an SE and then an SE leader, I actually decided I wanted the big money. So I was an account executive for about 5 years. And I had an SE working for me who had been working under me when I was a manager. He had been working under me. And then he actually moved into a management role, but he was working on a deal for me as an AE. And one day he just let me have it. I mean, for like 3 minutes, he just unloaded on me. And the second he finished, he was like, "Oh my gosh, Chris, I am so sorry." And I said, "No, I won't mention his name," but I said, "No, I needed to hear everything you just told me. And I owe you an apology, and I'm sorry." And that we already had a good relationship, but our relationship went from here to here almost instantly, because he learned without a fraction of a doubt that if he needs to tell me something that I don't want to hear, that he has permission to do so, and he can get really angry in the process, and it's okay. And what he said was actually good for me to hear. So really, really powerful. And if we're not having some of those emotional conversations, we're not growing. So I think that's really good.
He was radically candid with you.
He was radically candid with me, and frankly, I needed some radical candor. So it's probably a good thing. Have you ever heard me share the 51-49 rule? I don't know if you've ever heard me. Have you heard me reference that?
Yes, okay. I think I have. Yes.
Okay. Well, for anybody who's listening, I'll reference it again. What I refer to as the 51-49 rule is AE and SE. We have an equal say in the engagement, in how we approach our customers and how we approach meetings. We have an equal seat at the table, but I always give my AE the final vote. They have 51% of the vote. I get 49% of the vote. Why? Because at the end of the day, if we don't close the deal, it's more their neck on the line than it is ours, right? Yes. So I always take the position of I'm gonna take a stance. I'm gonna tell you how I think we should approach whatever it happens to be. But if we fundamentally disagree after I've made my case, and you decide that you want to go in this way, unless it's just something I can't go along with, you get the final vote. So, and I think that's an important thing to remember, that sales is much more of a self-correcting profession than pre-sales. If you're not hitting your numbers as an AE, you're not keeping your job. So very well said. I want to glance at Ramsey says, "I love new A's. I get to train them the way I want to." Well, so you can whip them into shape. Is that what you're saying, Ramsey? I love it. Sara, I'm looking at the clock. We've believe it or not, we've been at this already for 40 minutes. The time tends to fly. Is there anything else? Is there anything else when you think about less demo and more of everything else? Is there anything else?
Yes, yes, there is a whole stack of other stuff as well. I'm a big fan of design thinking principles. So sitting with your customer and doing journey mapping. So really, and I have found that using design thinking often opens up a whole wealth of other solutions that the customer hadn't considered. And therefore you grow the deal size, which is always a plus thing to happen. So, being able to sit with your customer and journey map their process, journey map their customer interaction, journey map, anything that the customer is trying to solve. If you walk them through that path, and there are some great tools to be able to do that virtually. Mural is one that I like, and that often engages in it results in very healthy engagement from the customer, and they have a lot of fun doing it because they get to think outside the box and brainstorm a little bit, and you can create some personas and you can have fun with those personas, so the customer is now having fun with you on that interaction. I also love whiteboarding, and I love anyone who's got great whiteboarding skills in a virtual environment, because I certainly don't. But if you on site with your customer, rather than going in and showing a demo, like, you can whiteboard out so many of the different principles and things. And the added benefit of that is that it stays up on the room, right? It's there for the rest of the conversations. You can circle back to those conversations by, referring back to the whiteboard 30 minutes later from when you first drew something, because something else in the conversation sparked that. Two more journey mapping, design thinking principles with that, especially picking out journey mapping and the whiteboarding.
Yeah, I love it. By the way, I think do you know Vark Torstensen? I hope I'm saying that right.
Vark, how are you? Yes.
He's the master. He's the whiteboard master, right?
He is.
He and I did this, I think, a couple years ago. He was on the show, and he actually did some whiteboarding for us with the colors and everything. He's the best. So Vark, it's good to see you, my friend. Glad you tuned in.
In fact, Vark and I did a lot of design thinking workshops back in my SAP UK days.
Okay.
I've worked very closely with Vark. It's great to see you, Vark. And
by the way,
up for design thinking.
This is why I love doing these things, because I never know who's going to drop by, and we see some old friends. I've seen a few people who've been on this show before, so it's just awesome. And what did he say? Collaborate, connect, and convince. Love that. Love that.
Yes.
Well, yes. The other thing that struck me as you were sharing that, Sara, is I think a lot of us, particularly early in this career, we almost use the demo as a crutch, and that we almost sort of hide behind the demo. And if we don't have the demo, we don't know what to say. And when I hear you talk about whether it's design thinking or whiteboarding or just being able to have a conversation, right? I think that collaborative, co-creative approach to working with our customers, we need to get there in our profession. If you can't have a customer-facing engagement without your hand on the mouse clicking through a demo, that's a sign that we need to grow there. Would you agree with that observation?
Yes, and I love your term of co-create with the customer. I think that's a great tagline for pre-sales, actually, Chris. You're onto something here. Pre-sales, the co-creators for customer solutions. Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's what it's all about. I mean, even when I am giving a demonstration, if somebody says, well, can it do such and such, or what happens when you click that? I'll oftentimes say, and look, it's been a long time since I've done demos, but you can give mouse and keyboard control. I'll say, well, do you want to try for yourself? find out for yourself, and I'll let them take control, right? So yeah, I think the more we can co-create, now it's not us selling them, right? It's us working together to try to find a better way to solve a problem or achieve what they're trying to achieve. But we have to earn the right.
Yes.
Do you follow me? Like, we have to build credibility. We have to build rapport. We have to earn the right to do that.
Yes, I fully agree. Yeah.
Another question that comes to mind, Sara, is you and I have both not only been doing this for a long time, but we've both been in the professional working world for a little while. I don't know.
What way of saying that we're both old, Chris?
I graduated from university in 91. So I have officially 30 plus years in the professional world. And frankly, I had 15 years of consulting experience before I got into pre-sales. So I had time to develop certain professional skills. Now there's a lot of people that are entering this profession as an early career professional. And so in addition to developing pre-sales skills, I think there's certain professional skills that they need to learn regardless of the profession. Do you have anything in particular that you do for the early career professionals that are moving into pre-sales, as opposed to, or that differs from what you do with, say, mid-career professionals who are moving into pre-sales?
I love this question, Chris, because so my experience at SAP we classified them as early talent, and they were definitely talent.
Yep.
The thing that struck me the most with people who were very early in their career in general, not necessarily just within pre-sales, is that they seem a lot more fearless than our generation. So they and a lot more confident than our generation at that stage in their career. And I love to capitalize on that with the early talent. They're also they've grown up with technology as well, so they're much more hands-on with doing fun things with pre-sales tools that build, like cartoonified little storyboards that they leave behind with a customer. I can remember the first time I saw that, and I was like, wow. The first thing that struck me was I'm old because I'm not aware of these things that are out here, and now I need to go learn about them. And the second thing that struck me was they're coming with so much creativity and innovation about how to be memorable and how to engage with the customer in that meaningful way that is fun. That I love pairing that people with their early talent with the more seasoned, so that both sets of skills get to be symbiotically absorbed, right?
I love that.
So that's I think that people, and also I have found that most tenured, seasoned pre-sales, they do also care about being collaborative and sharing their knowledge. So they're more than willing to mentor and coach. I think I've been so fortunate with the people I've worked with, certainly over my long career, that, the more experienced people get in the role, the more willing they are to be collaborative and share and help develop the younger talent that is coming into the organization.
Yeah.
I absolutely love seeing the innovations and creativity that comes from people fresh.
Yeah. And it really is amazing to me. And I think this. I actually work with the SAP Pre-Sales Academy. So I've been a guest instructor with them for going on 3 years now. And it's amazing to me to see groups and organizations like theirs and others that are bringing early talent, to use their term, into this profession. I'm inspired to ask you. Mentioned that you see a certain fearlessness and confidence about them. is there any downside, or is there any negative to that fearlessness and maybe unfounded confidence, or is it just all positive?
It's 90% positive, Chris. I think that the 10% is the experience that comes from having lots of at-bats in customer engagements. And notice I didn't say demos. I said customer engagements.
Good for you. You had me at hello on that. Yeah.
Because I think that every customer engagement that you go through, you learn something about a technique or an approach that maybe resonated or didn't. And that just comes with experience. So you just, as much as you can shadow when you're early in your career, as much as you can see those seasoned professionals engaged in a customer opportunity, a customer pursuit, the easier it is to rub that 10% off.
Really well said. Really well said. My children range in age from 20 to 28. And so I feel like I learn as much from them about things not related to work as they learn from me these days. So I can't tell you how many times my kids sit down and like, Dad, let me see if I can explain to you how things are now.
I get that from my 17 and 15-year-olds.
Yeah, indeed. So unbelievably, we've been at this almost an hour, Sara, and we're gonna try to land this plane on time. You have been so graceful with your time. There are just a few other questions that I think are worth just mentioning and touching on. Ramsey asked, and you just mentioned skills to learn. Are there any skills that you've had to unlearn over your career? Ramsey, great question. I think I thought of one, but Sara, I'm going to kick it over to you first.
I think that I'm not sure if I had to unlearn it, but I definitely had to temper it. So I was trying to break into management at SAP, and because I'm very vocal and I am very passionate, it was coming, and because of the way I was portraying it earlier in my career, it was tagging me with an emotional label. And I got a great piece of advice from a very senior person at SAP who told me that, Sara, we can see where you're coming from, and it is with a heart of gold, but you need to be able to adapt how you portray that so that it does come across as passion and not emotion. And I had to work very hard on that to make sure that I remained true to myself, which is, I feel strongly, I have strong opinions. I want the best for the people around me. I want the best for our customers. I want to do what I think is best for processes and things like that. But it is, okay, I have to take the emotion out of it so that it is coming across as passionate. So I don't know if it's a skill I had to unlearn, but it was definitely something that I didn't want to be tagged as emotional. I wanted to own and proudly own a passionate badge. And so that took some effort.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it sounds like that's a skill you had to temper a little bit, for lack of a better term. And I can appreciate that one in particular a great deal. Probably not surprisingly, I tend to be very emotional, very, very passionate about my thoughts and my positions. And I remember, in fact, distinctly remember one time I was on a conference call, and this is back. I worked with a company, and we each had offices, and we were on a conference call with product, and I think they had just released a new product, and they were seeking feedback from us, and I was very passionate about this one thing, and I felt like they got there halfway, but not all the way. And so I was sort of, sharing what I think they could do to really hit it out of the park. And my sales director was in an office across the room, and he put himself on mute, and he came into my office, and And when I paused, he said, I put myself on mute. He said, Chris, I know you're passionate about this, but you just sound angry. And if you just sound angry, no one's going to want to hear from you. And I took that to heart. I realized very similar. It was passion, and it was energy, but it was coming across in a negative manner. Right. Yeah. So, the one thing that I feel like I've had to unlearn a little bit, Sara, is separating the discovery process or the discovery conversation from the delivery or demo or presentation, right? People call it now the disco demo. For me, and if you've read the book, I talk about the discovery conversation and then the demo or the meeting or the POC, and those I sort of had to unlearn the fact that those are separate events, right? And that they tend to happen at the same time. So, in any event, it's tough to be in, for me, I feel like I'm an old dog trying to learn new tricks. So, we do get very set in our ways. Final question. What if you have the skills, but your product or vertical experience is not much needed by other companies? Sara, thank you for the question. How do you interpret this question, Sara?
What if you have the skills, but your product or vertical?
So in other words, it's
like a real niche area, like maybe you are a cybersecurity expert in crypto and you're trying to break into something else. I think, well, this is the great thing about pre-sales, right? Is that it is the fundamentals of the role. If you can, I would much rather take somebody who displays the right attributes of a pre-sales person than somebody, because you can train anybody on technology. If they've proven that they can learn something and demonstrate it and sell it, then they can do that with other technologies. 100%. So I would much rather take somebody like that than somebody who is not naturally curious, is not willing to learn, doesn't feel confident about being in front of a customer, regardless of their level. You might be speaking to a CEO of a Fortune 100 customer one day, and then speaking to an agent, a support agent the next day. You've got to be able to have some of those skills in being able to adapt conversations with that. I'd much rather take a lot more of those soft skills, because anybody can, if you've proven it once, anybody can learn any technology.
Amen. Yeah, really well said. And by the way, I'm so glad you mentioned curiosity. I think sincere curiosity and just a natural curiosity is such a powerful skill in our profession. But by the way, there's one more question. Varick asked another question that I think is worth just addressing before we wrap things up. How much do you rate developing the skills of business storytelling? Is it now just table stakes? Interesting question. What do you think? Yeah, Vark, thank you for that question. What do you think, Sara?
I've definitely seen an uptick in everything, on LinkedIn and within companies about storytelling. And when you think about the most memorable experiences that you've had in your life, or the best movies you've seen, or the best TV ads, they're all stories. And what resonates and remains with you is how well that story is told. I've spent a lot of time analyzing the 90-second or the 30-second ads and the 90-second ads out there, and movie trailers, because you don't get very much time in front of somebody to persuade them to do something. And if a 30-second movie trailer is going to convince you to go see the movie, that's how we should be thinking about what we're doing in pre-sales. I'm not sure if it's table stakes right now, but it's sure moving along that path extremely fast.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I think I was going to say something similar. I'm not sure I'm ready to call it table stakes. And here's why. It's difficult storytelling, and being a good storyteller is not easy. And I think it's a skill. I still feel like it's a skill I'm developing, to be perfectly transparent. So I think that is one of the things that really separates some of the best SEs from the others. Sara, we have been at this for an hour. You're a busy person, so I know I need to let you go. Any closing thoughts from you as we put a bow on today's conversation?
I think I would just say it. Cap it all off by saying I love the pre-sales role. I love what pre-sales do in our industry. It is definitely the best job in tech. I'm so grateful for all of you who've tuned in today and giving your time to have this conversation. I'm very grateful to you, Chris, for hosting me. This has been fantastic. I have loved talking to you about everything but the demo and a whole lot more. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Well, you have been an absolute delight to have on, Sara. Like I said, your personality comes through in a camera, I think, more than most. So it's been a pleasure to have you. And I will echo your sentiments, folks. Varric and Ramsey and Jeff, and I know I'm Sheriff. Thank you so much for joining. And I think we had quite a few others. If you have not done so already, I encourage you to follow Tech Sales Advice, Tech Sales Advisors. You can, of course, go to the website, techsalesadvisors.com. I am certain Sara would be delighted to have you connect with her on LinkedIn if you're not already connected. And folks, with that, I wish you a nice weekend. Sara, hang around for just a second. I'm going to give you your parting gift backstage. For everyone else, have a good weekend. We'll see you next time on Tech Sales Advice. Bye all.
Bye.